And welcome to another episode of the 60 Go podcast. My name's Tom Campbell. Great to have your company. Siebes, week one is ahead of us. Who's the player you're most looking forward to see in 2024?
Oh, mate, I think probably because it's this weekend, Tom Trbojevic. I think, any rugby league lover is hoping that he can get a full season in because he's so good and the history he's had with injury is, it's such a shame.
Absolutely. It'd be good to see him play at least 20 games for Manly. If you can bank 20 games, then I think that Manly will be in a pretty good spot come the end of the year. We're going to do our predictions for the year, and we'll start off with the top 8. Let's just start off with the top 4 for starters, and then we'll do on the other part of the top 8. So who's your top 4?
My top 4, look, I've penciled it in order, but yeah, it could fall into any order here. So I've got Panthers, Manly, Roosters, and Parramatta.
Parramatta.
I didn't have them in there until Sunday. And look, there's plenty of people who are considered good judges who are talking the Titans up. I'm not one of them. But if the Titans are meant to be talked up as much as, or if they're going to be as good as what they're being talked up to be, well, Para did that in second gear on the weekend, and I know it's only a trial, but both teams were essentially full strength, and Para really looked after them.
So just again, who was that? Sorry, you had Manly, Parramatta.
So no, Penrith.
Oh, Penrith.
Manly.
Yep.
Roosters.
Yep.
Parramatta.
Okay. So we've got 3 out of the 4 that are the same. So Panthers, Roosters, Manly are in my top 4. And the other one, Storm for me. I couldn't split the Storm and the Broncos for 4th and 5th, so I've put the Storm at 4. Manly's the interesting one, obviously going to raise a lot of eyebrows. I think, and I know it's tough for you to talk about because your brother's the coach, but I tell you what, this team's got a lot of points in them, and they're going to win a lot of games by scoring a lot of points.
They're also at that their squad is at that point in time where, yes, they've always had some experienced guys, but the young fellas are now 50, 60, 70 games in. And I think that's when you really see the difference in guys that are showing potential and guys that are actually going to be stars. So, your Jason Saabs, your Coolers, Olakau'atu, Paseka, Sipley. There's some really quality players there, and they're actually – all of a sudden they've played 70 games of first grade. And I think everyone saw what happened with Broncos where they finally got to that point where all those young guys got to 50, 60, 70 games. Certainly the experience helps. But for me, regardless of any of that, if Tom Trbojevic stays fit, they are pushed for the top 4. Simple as that. If he's not fit, if he only plays half a season like he did last year, well, then they're in a fight to make the 8. But that's how important he is, and that's how good he is.
Here's the thing about Manly, though. In previous seasons, up until the back end of last year, Ruben Garrick was the slot-in fullback for when Tom missed games. Tom's going to miss games, whether it be origin or injury. He's going to miss a few games here and there. And I'm not saying Garrick did a bad job, but the job that Cooler did at the back end of last year was just out of this world. And so he provides an extra gear that Manly can go to when Tom's not there.
Well, I think you would agree that when Ruben Garrick plays fullback, he's a safe option. He does the job. Ruben Garrick is an elite winger. I think he'll actually be a very good centre as well. So I think that's probably, a wait and see, but I do think he'll be an excellent centre. But you're right. Cooler, he's got X factor about him when he moved back to fullback. And again, if and when Tom misses games, I think that'll be the way they go. And it's certainly, they looked sharp when he was there last year in those last few games.
The Manly team of this year remind me a lot of the Broncos team of last year. Their back 5, speed, total speed across the board. And they're like the addition of Luke Brooks. I don't think there's a single person cheering against Luke Brooks going into this year. He looked really good in the first couple of trials that he had. When DCE goes and plays Origin, he gives them a really solid halves option there. I saw a list the other day of all the halves Cherry Evans has played with, not named Kieran Foran. It's a list not to be desired. It's not the
No,
greatest list ever. So
I
this
think,
this is potentially the best halves partner he's had.
yeah, it is, mate. And I think, if you look at that list, would Blake Green be the best player on that list that he's played in the halves with? And look, to be fair, he's a toiler.
Yep. Yep. He probably is, to be fair. So look, really exciting times for Manly. And I know it's a tough conversation to talk about because it is your brother who's coaching the team, but you know what? It's almost funny in a way, Steve. I think there is a bit of pressure on Manly this year because they've got a great squad. Like you can't look at this squad and think, oh, then they're no hope of making top four. Like, and to be fair, I think that there's probably 6 genuine chances for the top four. So, if a team finishes third, that might only be one win above sixth. So it could obviously change a little bit. But this Manly squad is deep. First of all, it's the deepest it's been in a few years, and it's bloody good.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with most of that. I think making the top 8 is a must. Like if they don't make the top
Yes.
8, look, I really think with the squad they've got, they've underachieved. Again, injuries, suspensions play a part in that. It can derail a season very quickly. But I think that the team has the ability or the talent to make the top 4. That's where I've got them at. And I just think there's going to be some teams that, naturally they always fall away a touch, and teams improve. And they've certainly got, some depth in the halves finally. They've got some depth in their outside back finally. And, are they a prop short? I don't know. It all depends on whether or not Paseka and Sipley continue to come along. Josh Aloiai didn't have the best year last year compared to what he had done the previous 2. But we've got to remember that he come off that World Cup where he injured his knee. He really missed a whole preseason, and then he was in and out with injury for a long time during the year. So I'm not going to put a line through him just yet. I do think a signing that hasn't been spoken about anywhere near enough is the Nathan Brown signing. I think he brings that little bit of aggression and leg speed into their pack as well. So at times, they can be a little bit one pace. Like I wouldn't swap Jake Trbojevic for anyone. He would be the first forward that I pick in any team that I would ever be involved in. But he's one paced. If you've got someone like Nathan Brown coming on and adding that leg speed, it's a different. It's just a different look at the pack.
That's 100% correct. And I think that they can take a lot of confidence out of the end of last year. They belted the teams that they should have beaten and put them to the sword. And the 2 games in particular that really stick out in my brain, the one against the Warriors, where they should have received a penalty right in front at the end of the game to win the game. And the other one was against the Panthers, where they lost 20-10 or 20-12, one of those. And they got a couple of really dud decisions. I remember a Liam Martin knock on for a try that wasn't called. And they got a couple of really dud decisions then. But and with the amount of injuries that they had at the time, no Tom, obviously, to push those 2 teams who were top 4 teams and Panthers went on to win the premiership, I thought that showed leaps and bounds as far as their progression throughout the year. And they did miss the 8 last year. But I think if you look at their form over the back sort of 8 weeks of the season, it'll be one of the most impressive form runs of the competition, particularly with the amount of injuries.
You mentioned it. You could go, finishing 3rd or 6th could be one game. Well, I think last year, 2 of the teams that I've got in my top 4 both missed the 8, but they were a point and 2 points respectively out of the 8. So, it's a win. It's both of them had golden point games in Para and Manly, and that's how close it is. And you said there's 6 teams that could make the 4. I reckon that whole top 8 that I'm going to name could make the 4. It wouldn't shock me, any of them. I think legitimately you could mount an argument. I've got my personal tip for the premiership, and we'll talk about that later. But I reckon you could mount an argument. There's 10 teams that, if things went their way and they got hot at the right time, could win the comp next year or this season.
Well, the other one I want to talk about is Parramatta, because a bit of a spoiler alert, I don't have Parramatta in my 8. So
I wouldn't have thought you.
So if Parramatta would have,
worry about that later.
If Parramatta would have missed the 8, obviously huge ramifications at Parramatta. Brad Arthur's probably gone. There'll be a lot of changes. So I think there's no doubt that this is a bit of a fork in the road as far as the Brad Arthur tenure at Parramatta goes. Does it concern you, Junior Paulo, another year older? We have seen these bigger forwards really start to slow down once they hit 30. Does that concern you? And also, the 9 isn't an especially strong position for them, and they really are reliant on their halves to carry them through.
Yes and no. I haven't seen anything yet that tells me Campbell Gillard or Paulo are slowing down. You know, they both played Origin last year, and um, they were both excellent during the year for Paris. So that doesn't worry me at all. Yeah, the 9 is a concern because, you know, Hands is only just starting his career and Lussig's a bit of a journeyman. So, you know, for sure, that's a concern. There's a massive rap on Brad Arthur's younger son, and there's got to be a reason that they were happy to let Reed Marnie go and not fork out an extra $100,000 or so for him. When, you know, I'm sure they would have found a way to do it if they thought that they didn't have something coming through. So I'm not too concerned. And we made 1,000 excuses previously about Manly, you know, with injuries and suspensions and things at the wrong time around Tommy Trbojevic. Well, you know, Para had Dylan Brown gone for a quarter of the season. Campbell Gillard gone for half a season with that hamstring and then a suspension. Mike Acevo missed, I think, 6 or 7 games with suspension. And 2 rounds to go when they needed to win 2 games. Mitchell Moses, who's their best player, broke his cheekbone. So, you know, they didn't have a great deal of fortune and again missed the 8 by one victory. I don't think I'm not concerned. You know, I'm not saying that they're going to win the, but I do think that with an even share of luck, like Penrith and Brisbane last year used about 26 players from their squad all year. Para used over 30. So, you know, they get that even share of luck that the teams that finished up the top had. I think they make the 4. I think they make the 8 definitely.
They have to start a lot better, don't they?
If they don't, Brad Arthur's in trouble.
Yeah, they have to start a lot better, don't they? 0-5's a whole.
Yeah, they do for sure. And that, you know, that start to the year was a tough year. There was a couple of 2-point losses. I think there was a golden point loss as well. You swap one of those results and you make the 8. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom for Para.
And the next 4?
Yeah, the next 4. So for me, I'm not confident about a couple of these. So as I said before, there could have been a number of teams that come in. I've got Knights, Broncos, Storm, Sharks. You flip that order in any way you want. I don't necessarily think they'll finish in that order. I see things with all of those squads that don't concern me. Concern me is not the right word, but I just think that there'll be a dip in each of those teams for whatever reason. The Storm is the interesting one. So they clearly need a middle or two. I think they are a little bit one pace through their pack, especially when Big Nelson's not on the field, because at least he's got that, you know, dynamic ball carrying ability where he can break a game open, bend the line, get on the front foot. Everyone else in their pack is a little bit one pace. You know, is that fair?
Yep, absolutely.
I think as well, the unknown for them is Nick Meaney and the centres. So their centres chopped and changed all year last year. Nick Meaney is certainly a good footballer and he's improved out of sight since he's been there. So I think he'll do a job. They've got good wingers. Pappenhausen is back. He's flying at the moment. So hopefully he gets another run of being injury-free like Turbo. Their halves, well, both of them didn't have the best years that they've had. But, you know, there's an argument that they were both carrying niggling injuries during the year. And Harry Grant, again, who's the best hooker in the comp, he wasn't good for the last, probably 4 of the last 6 weeks. Certainly wasn't at his best either. So there's excuses there. I think if their spine obviously are fit and firing and they can get someone to take them forward, they certainly, you know, they push up into contention for the top 4 again. But a couple of injuries to those key players and you know, it's bottom of the 8. Not bottom 8, but
yes. Yeah. I've got Broncos, Knights, Warriors, Sharks. Now, I'm much more confident with Broncos and Knights, but this is where I found like there's a bit of a gap with the top six to me and the rest. Like Warriors, Sharks, I had about 4 teams there, like Warriors, Sharks, Cowboys, and Eels. Take your pick for me. Like it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Really, like there's not a lot between those 4 teams for me. So it might come down to one game separates 7th and 11th in this comp. So I'm much more confident with the Broncos and the Knights.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think the Warriors are again they could be top 4, and it wouldn't shock any of us. I just think, like the Cowboys the year before, out of their regular 17, it'd be 13, 14 of them had career best years. Can they do it again?
I was a little bit skeptical of the Warriors, obviously, but then thinking about it, they bought Roger Tuivasa-Sheck back, who's just looked tremendous in the trials. You could not possibly fault him. And so I do think they are going to lean on him a little bit, which is probably fine, because if he plays like he did in the trials, then he's going to be a weapon for them. And I think that still with Adam Fanua-Blake there, still with Tohu Harris, I think that there's enough there to make the 8.
Well, definitely. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, again, as I said, I left them out of my 8, but yeah, I think that they'll be between 6th and 10th.
Give me a grand final.
Ooh. I'm going to go. Well, Tom, why are you doing this to me? I've got. Can I pass on that till later?
Okay, we'll finish with the.
But I've also got 2 Smokies.
All right. We'll finish with the grand final. Dally M.
Tom Trbojevic.
Yep, fair call. I thought about Daly Cherry Evans. I thought about going Cherry Evans, but then I thought, you know what, Cherry Evans and Tom are probably going to sabotage each other a lot for points. I've gone Kalen again, purely because there's no one to take points off him in that Newcastle team. Whenever they win games, he's collecting 3 points or 6 points, whatever it is now. He's collecting maximum points. So if he stays healthy, then I think it would be very hard to see him not winning the Dally M, because the Knights are a good team. So I think they're going to win enough games for Ponga to collect the points and probably be the Australian number 1 at the end of the year if he does that.
Yeah, I think he takes the Maroons number 1 back during the season as well.
Yep, that's probably fair. The Spoon.
Spoon is the Tigers.
I 100% agree.
They did not show a thing. There's not one minuscule of improvement in them over the trials. So
I'll preface this by saying I know it's the trials, but they played when they were full strength in their trial. My God, they wouldn't have beat the Capras that game. Like, they were so horrific.
They were, and they played a 12-man Warriors who only had half a squad playing and struggled to put them away. Like, the Warriors actually in the end could have won that game.
Yeah, and if that wasn't a trial,
I don't know. They look worse.
They could be. And if that wasn't a trial against the Warriors, I think the Warriors probably would have won that game. Like, because they would have had full strength teams. I think they would have been able to get it done.
And they would have kept.
Yes, exactly. And the other thing I think you got to take in mind is the 2 overwhelming favourites for the Spoon, the Dragons and the Tigers, right? The coaching difference between Shane Flanagan and Benji Marshall is the moon. Like, it's totally different.
Look, and the Dragons aren't that bad. They're not good, but they're not that bad. I thought the Raiders actually were going to be a contender for the Spoon, and I would have said them before last weekend. But again, after watching the Raiders on the weekend closely, it's like, you know what? They're going to win enough home games in the middle of winter. They'll upset a red-hot top 4 side just because they're good. And Ricky Stewart would have, lost his mind in the dressing room and got him up for the game. Like, they're going to win games. So,
yeah,
the Dogs. I think the Dogs are crap. They're still going to be better than the Tigers. I personally think the Titans are crap. They're going to be better than the Tigers. So,
the Dogs. The The Dogs are going to walk out there with a bunch of 14s and Stephen Crichton. That is their team. They are a team of 14s with Stephen Crichton.
Have you had a look at their predicted 17?
I haven't, but I'd imagine it'd be pretty interesting.
Look, have we got to a point where, for anyone who does bother to listen to us, we're recording this one a little bit later at night. So I think it's after the time I'm allowed to swear. It's shit. It is shit. They've got 13 good players.
Yeah. And
12 utility.
At what week does Crichton get moved to either 5'8" or fullback?
Fullback, maybe. I hope they don't move him to 5'8". I don't know. I just think they're a better balanced side if they move anyone to the halves, Burton to left centre, Crichton right centre. You know, they got some strike on both sides then. Again, though, I still think they'll win more games than what the Tigers will.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because they've got Reed Marnie, they've got Kickout, they've got Crichton, they've got Burton, they've got Addo Carr. So there's blokes who can create opportunities and there's blokes who can finish those opportunities. So I think they're going to win more games.
Can you imagine if Api Coruscant got hurt? What a disaster for them. Unwatchable.
What about when the Tigers, if they come out and they're unreal and they make the top 8, we'll have to back and out ourselves.
You know what? I hope they do, because I tell you what, it's been a lean run for the old Tigers, and but it's one of those situations I'll believe it when I see it. I believe when I see it, because they were horrendous. They were, without a doubt, in my opinion, put on the worst display on the trials. If an alien come down and they just watched the trials, they knew nothing else about rugby league, they would pick the Tigers for the spoon.
Yeah, would have to. You know, I know Manly were crap on the weekend, but they're
all in Vegas, aren't they?
In New South Wales Cup seconds playing, let alone, you know, their actual result. So that was excusable. Broncos had Q Cup players. Roosters and Rabbits, well, you know, again, Rabbits had their essentially their second New South Wales Cup team playing at times. So
same of course they were going to there in Vegas.
Yeah. So, you know, there's plenty of excuses there, but I don't know. It just doesn't look great.
Grand final. Finish it off.
Okay. Well, premiers. Penrith are the premiers. Penrith win again. While Nathan Cleary's fit, I won't, you know, say anyone else is going to win the comp. But my two are, and again, I've got to a point where Parramatta is within my blood. So I'm always going to think they're a chance. I don't think they're going to be too bad, and I've got them as a smoky. Because you don't go from making a grand final the year before. I can see reasons why that things didn't go the way they could have last year. So it's a forgive for me. And I think that they've got the talent there to make a grand final. And Manly are my other smokies. And again, you know, people can bag me, say what they want. I just look at the squad, and if they stay fit, they're going to score points. So if you're going to beat them, you're going to have to.
Yeah, I agree. I'm fading Panthers this year. This is the year for me. I jump off the bandwagon. I'm going to go the Roosters to win the premiership. And if they're not their grand final day, my God, like this team is too talented not to be there on grand final day.
I agree. You spoke before about, you know, the Manly squad. The Rooster squad is significantly better than every other squad.
Yeah.
So that in mind, where they've ended up the last few years, some of the chunks of the seasons that they've had, realistically, does Trent Robinson start to come under fire if he can't get this side at least to a top 4? You know, they've got to be there prelim weekend. Otherwise, it's a failure.
Absolutely. And, you know, you just go through their team, like you've got internationals everywhere. You've got one of the best front rows in the game. You're signing one of the best, probably the best bench front rower from Panthers to you. So it weakens Panthers, strengthens you guys. Lindsay Collins is a machine.
Angus is 17.
No.
Teamless Tuesday today. And he was not in their 17. He played in the World Cup last year.
Yeah.
Or 18 months, less than 18 months ago. You know, it's
their depth is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if they're not their grand final day, we've got some serious issues.
How do you see the Broncos going?
Probably second week of the finals. I definitely think they come back to the pack a little bit, losing Flegler and Farnworth. I think the loss of Farnworth is immense. And Reynolds is only getting older.
Yeah.
Like, we cannot keep banking Reynolds' fitness into the back end of the season forever. And I know that he's just extended for another year. That's great news for them. But, you know, I just prefer other teams this year. I prefer Manly over them. I prefer Melbourne purely based on the spine. You know, Melbourne was able to get to the second, I think it was the second week of the finals last year with no Pappenhausen. And so I just think that there's other improvements there.
Oh, yeah, second week of the final. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And definitely. Or was it? No, second week. And we all agree that they were, they struggled a bit last year at times, but they still were top four.
Yeah, absolutely. So Roosters for me, Panthers for you, and we'll see how it goes. It should be a good year, I think. There's probably 12. I'll go Manly as a smoky. I think they can make a deep run, and particularly if they get top four, home game of Brookie, never know, might sneak into a prelim and a grand final.
What about we haven't spoken about the Rabbits?
No,
see them doing anything?
I've got them missing the 8, and big test for them this weekend. Now, this is where I make myself look like a fool, because I'm in one of those last man standing comps for this year. So where you give one tip a week, and my first tip, I like to go with the first game. That way you're stress free for the weekend. You know what's happening for the rest of the weekend. I'm going Manly in the first week to beat South over in Vegas. I think also, and we've only got a couple of minutes left, but shorter fields in Vegas, shorter width of the field. So that left back line should not be as potent for South Sydney.
It won't be, but it also takes away Manly's blistering speed they've got on the edges as well. It's probably going to come down to a forward-orientated game, and Rabbits do have a good forward pack. I think it'll be a good game of footy.
They do. I think it'd be a great game as well. Probably lower scoring than you probably think in the end for that game, but should be good either way. Siebes, thanks for your time. Should be a good year, hey?
Thanks, mate.
This has been the 60 Podcast, and that is full time.